My name is Olivia. I never thought I would be sharing my story, but after what Jesus showed me after my death experience, I understand I have no choice. What I saw was too crucial to keep to myself, particularly given the time we're living in. I died for 8 minutes on January 14th, 2025. During that moment, Jesus Christ himself revealed to me terrifying realities regarding the California fires that I was commanded to share with the entire world. What I uncovered will profoundly impact you. Let me share with you how it transpired. For 27 years, I worked as a firefighter with the California State Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. The position wasn't only my career, it was my calling in life. I experienced God's presence leading and safeguarding me each moment I entered those flames. Even after retirement, I remained involved as a consultant and trainer, passing on what I learned to future generations. That early morning in January began like any other day. I was headed to a fire safety training session at a nearby church when I started feeling strange. My chest felt tightened, and I was having difficulties catching my breath. I made my way over to the side of the road, assuming I just needed some time to collect myself. That was the last thing I remember before everything turned dark. What happened next transformed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the spiritual struggle we're going through at this moment in California. The experience I'm about to share with you is so deep, so overpowering in its consequences, that I've spent many hours in prayer asking for help on how to convey it appropriately. But Jesus made it clear. This message must be shared, regardless of how inadequate words might sound to explain it. The first feeling I remember after losing consciousness wasn't darkness. It was light. Not the severe, shining light of a hospital room or the soothing glow of sunrise, but something completely different. It was a light that appeared to come from nowhere instantly, a light that strangely seemed alive and aware. In that instant, I remembered what the Bible meant when it described God as light. I could see my body below me, slumping over in my car as others rushed to help, but I didn't feel any connection to it anymore. No fear or worry about leaving it behind. Rather, I felt overwhelmed with a tranquility that goes beyond description. A tranquility that went beyond ordinary calmness or fulfillment. It felt as if every anxiety or every fear, every worldly concern, had been slightly driven away. But this was just the beginning. Unexpectedly, the scene below started to vanish, and I found myself being pulled upward through something that I can only describe as layers of truth. It was not like flying or floating. It was rather like the layers of existence themselves were peeled back, exposing deeper and deeper realities with every passing second. The presence I felt got stronger as I went through these layers was unlike whatever I'd ever encountered in my worldly life. It was true love, but not the limited, conditional love we know as humans. This was pure love, love that understood everything about me. Every mistake, every uncertainty, every moment of vulnerability, and loved me wholeheartedly. Then he showed up. Jesus Christ himself was standing before me, though stood isn't precisely the right word. His presence was all over, covering everything, but still extremely personal and immediate. His appearance was both familiar and strange. The love that emanated from him was so intense it would have taken me to my knees, if I would still have actual knees to fall upon. His face, how can I explain it? It possessed all the power and majesty of the Creator of heaven and earth, yet also endless love and compassion. Those fires, Jesus said, are not just natural disasters. They are physical representations of spiritual corruption. The adversary has found fertile roots in the hearts that are turning away from reality, from love, from me. Every time my children choose the ways of the world over my ways, these entities become more powerful. He showed me the way these spiritual powers worked. They never ignited the physical fire directly. They didn't have to. Rather, they influenced human decisions and deeds that led to situations where fires might naturally begin and spread. They fed off people's anxiety, rage, and particularly their spiritual apathy. Look more deeply, Jesus recommended, and immediately I could see how these entities worked in the spiritual world. They whispered deception into people's minds. That God wasn't real, that reality was relative, and that personal comfort was more essential than spiritual growth. With every individual who accepted these deceptions, the spiritual darkness got more powerful, and the physical fire got harder to control. But then Jesus showed me something that inspired me with hope. In certain locations, I observed points of shining light fighting back against the darkness. These lights, he explained, were people in communities who had preserved their faith, who put God first in their lives, and who lived in true connection with Him. Where these lights shone brightest, the spiritual beings couldn't keep their grasp, and the physical fires strained to make progress. It wasn't that these places never had fire. They did, but the fires could not attain the same destructive power they had in other locations. "Watch this closely," Jesus said, and showed me a series of visuals that spanned time. I watched how California had slowly turned away from genuine faith over many years. It wasn't an abrupt change. It happened gradually, almost imperceptibly. People did not reject God openly. They just put Him on the margins of their lives. They replaced true worship with pleasure, deep faith with superficial spirituality, and genuine community with online connections. "My church," Jesus continued with sincere sorrow in the tone of his voice, "has too often chosen luxury over faith, popularity over reality, and compromise over determination. Many people who have my name have substituted relationships with ritual, passion with programs, and genuine worship with meaningless traditions." Then he showed me what would occur if this pattern continued. The vision was terrible. I witnessed the fires spreading beyond anything we've encountered before, destroying not only forests and properties, but threatening to burn away the entire fabric of society. These weren't just wildfires. They were judgment fires, destroying everything that wasn't built on the firm foundation of genuine faith. But then Jesus showed me another potential, the way of redemption. I watched people starting to wake up, going back to God with their sincere hearts. I watched churches become places of genuine prayer again, not merely places for gatherings. I witnessed families returning to genuine faith and societies being transformed by the power of God's love. When this happened, the spiritual environment transformed tremendously. The dark entities that had been feeding off the fires started to weaken and retreat. The physical fires, while still there, became controllable once again. Conventional firefighting strategies started to perform more successfully since they weren't fighting against supernatural forces anymore. This, Jesus said, is the message you have to share. The fires in the state of California will not be controlled by human forces alone. No amount of modern technology, no firefighting strategy, and no government initiative can address the root cause. These fires are a warning and a call to come back to me. He then showed me particular details about how this return to faith needed to take place. It was not about just going to church more regularly or saying extra prayers. It was about a profound change of mindset. He showed me that true repentance and restoration to faith would manifest in practical ways. I watched families shutting off their devices and engaging in prayer together. I watched churches open their doors for prolonged periods of prayer and worship, not just intended services. I watched communities come together to help each other, share resources, and motivate one another in faith. Ultimately, I saw how this renewal had begun with human hearts. Jesus showed me how every individual's decision to put God first caused ripples in the spiritual world. When many people in an area made this decision, it created a spiritual atmosphere that the forces behind the fires could not permeate. But Jesus warned, time is short. The time frame for this change is closing. The fires you see today are just the beginning of my people. Do not return to me with their sincere hearts. He then showed me something that sent tears to my spiritual eyes. I watched how much he loved every individual in California, including people who had turned their backs on him. His heart was broken for every property lost and every life affected by the fires. But his love was perfect, and perfect love requires allowing other people to face the consequences of their actions, so they will turn back to him. Remember, he said, these fires may be stopped, but not through human effort only. Tell my people that I am waiting wholeheartedly. Tell them that sincere repentance and return to faith will change everything. Tell them that no political remedy, no technological advance, and no human knowledge will solve what is basically a spiritual issue. The vision went on as Jesus, showed me further details regarding how this spiritual renewal would have to happen. He showed me that conventional religious activities without heart change were not enough. He showed me that so many churches needed to get back to their first love, not events or presentations, but real connections with Him. I saw how this message would be received. Others would ignore it, others would despise it, but people whose hearts were ready to understand the truth and respond. Jesus showed me that these individuals would become points of light in their communities, helping others understand and respond to the call to return to faith. The power of the vision began to intensify. Jesus showed me how every prayer, every act of sincere worship, and every moment of true confession has power in the spiritual world. I watched how these spiritual actions created a kind of protective covering over places, which made it difficult for the forces behind the fires to operate. But He also showed me what would take place in regions where people disregarded this message. The fires would continue to get worse, challenging an explanation and surpassing our greatest efforts at controlling them. Conventional firefighting strategies would become less and less effective since they weren't addressing the root of the problem. Just before I felt myself being taken back to my body, Jesus gave me a final message. Tell them that I love them. Tell them that it's never too late to come back to me. But remind them also that they have to choose now. The time for fence sitting is over. The time for casual faith is over. They have to choose whether they would serve me with their sincere hearts or continue on their current way. The love in His words was overpowering, but so was the urgency. This wasn't simply a recommendation or a pleasant spiritual thought. It was a matter of surviving, both spiritually and physically. As I began feeling a pull back into my body, Jesus spoke one more time. Remember everything that you've witnessed. Share it sincerely. Don't let fear of condemnation prevent you from telling the truth. People who have ears to hear will understand. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air while paramedics worked over me. They eventually told me I had been clinically dead for 8 minutes. By every medical knowledge, I should have suffered brain damage from the lack of oxygen. Rather, my mind was clearer than ever, full of the urgent message Jesus had given me. That's the reason why I'm sharing my story now. What Jesus showed me was not just for me. It's a message to anybody who will listen. The fires in the state of California are more than natural disasters. They're a spiritual wake-up call, a warning of what's ahead if we do not return to genuine faith. The solution is easy, but it involves something many individuals don't want to give. Wholehearted submission to God, not just regular church attendance or casual prayer, but true life-changing faith that puts God first in everything. May God bless you all.